Or is this full-time MMA now?
I love full-time MMA right now.
Full-time MMA?
MMA,
Nothing
yeah.
else?
My life, man, yeah.
Back to the daily grind, and shout out to the full-time patrons. Make sure to hit subscribe if you're new and hit thumbs up if you're not a baby back bagel biting bitch boy, cause you know what time it is. It's full time.
MMA.
And former NFL star, Dallas Cowboy and Carolina Panther Greg Hardy, who has transitioned to MMA since leaving the NFL with a somewhat checkered past, has just officially became a part of the UFC. Tonight, Greg Hardy fought on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. It was the very first episode of this season. Greg Hardy fought another former NFL veteran in Austin Lane, and Greg Hardy earned a first-round knockout in just under 1 minute. It was like 53 seconds. Greg Hardy had already earned his KO, and with that performance, he earned a UFC contract. He wasn't the only one that earned a contract tonight. There was one other gentleman, Alonzo Minifield, but this is definitely the most polarizing, to say the least. Greg Hardy has a little bit of a checkered past with, his domestic violence issues that he I mean, it's only one issue that I know of. It's not like he had a history of multiple incidents, but that one issue does stick out like a sore thumb, even though the alleged victim didn't actually show up to court, so he was never actually like reprimanded for the situation, as far as, he never was convicted of it. But he was, he was never charged, but he was convicted. But she didn't show up to court. So with that being said, Greg Hardy now is turned over a new leaf. He's, doesn't seem to be that same guy in the interviews. If you listen to him, if you listen to people that have trained with him, anybody that's really been associating with Greg Hardy since he's transitioned to MMA, all they have really to say is good things about Greg Hardy. Now he went 3-0 undefeated in his amateur career, and he got all first-round KOs. He just fought on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, which was his first actual pro fight, but he got another first-round KO. Now he's going to be moving to the UFC at 1-0, just a very inexperienced professional fighter still. He did have those 3 amateur fights, but as far as pro fights, Greg Hardy is only 1-0, and he's now in the UFC. Now, this is kind of like a Brock Lesnar CM Punk situation a little bit, but the difference here, I'll take CM Punk out of that equation, because Greg Hardy actually earned his way to the UFC. He actually fought 3 amateur fights, won those spectacularly, fought on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series. But I say, I'll compare him to Brock Lesnar in a sense, because he's coming from another, Brock Lesnar came from the WWE. It's clearly different than the NFL, but you're bringing a new fan base, a whole new set of eyes, and potentially growing the sport of MMA. Now, with that being said, Greg Hardy also does not have a lot of combat experience, kind of like a Brock Lesnar before the UFC. Now, the difference with Brock Lesnar is he actually had his wrestling base. Greg Hardy doesn't necessarily have that. So honestly, man, he's coming over here and he's a heavyweight, and he can definitely knock dudes out. That's for sure. That's the difference about the heavyweight division, which is why I won't compare him to CM Punk, because he's definitely got a power puncher's chance. If Greg Hardy connects with any heavyweight in the UFC in that first round and actually is able to connect, he's probably going to knock a dude out or 2. But as far as how Greg Hardy's future as a UFC, champion and shit like that, I don't ever see that happening, because he's coming over, it's not like he's got wrestling experience, to my knowledge, like Brock Lesnar did, in boxing, kickboxing. He's, played football for a lot of the time. And we've seen some footballers coming over, well, footballer, I don't mean it like soccer, but you get the point, American football, like Eric Anders. He's a guy that played college football, and he's went undefeated until he faced Lyoto Machida, but he had some success in the middleweight division. Now, when you take it up a notch to the heavyweight division, skill is even less a factor, because for one, you're going to have, a lot of guys, will have a cardio advantage coming into the fight. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case for Greg Hardy, to be honest. After he fought, he got a first-round knockout on Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, and he really seemed like he was breathing pretty hard in the post-fight interview, and the fight only lasted 50 seconds. But coming over from the NFL and doing all of those drills and shit like that, usually those are pretty conditioned athletes. Now, Greg Hardy hasn't been playing football for a while now. He's actually been training MMA. But I would, just assuming from his athletic past, think he had a little bit of a cardio advantage on a lot of heavyweights. You know, the heavyweight division is a division where sometimes you see guys gassing out toward the end of the fight, and maybe Greg Hardy could be one of those guys. You know, I don't know about that, but even on a skill level, Greg Hardy is going to have some catching up to do, I feel like, with a lot of these UFC fighters. Now, there's going to be probably some guys at the bottom of the heavyweight division, you know, other guys in the UFC, or even guys possibly in the top 15, right? If you don't have the best striking defense, if you're a guy that likes to get into slugfest, or that's your style, you don't want to get a slugfest in a guy with a guy like Greg Hardy, because if he connects, you could for sure be going to sleep. So, with that being said, I've definitely got my eyes on Greg Hardy as far as the UFC is concerned. I want to see how he does against the top guys. Honestly, I don't see it ending well for him as far as becoming like the UFC heavyweight champion, retiring on top. Ooh, no, it's just a question of who's going to be the first guy to beat Greg Hardy. You know what I'm saying? I definitely think he's going to get beat now that he's messing with the big boys in the UFC. But when is it going to be? Is it going to be in his first actual test against the UFC guy? Is he going to beat a couple of guys in the UFC? Is he going to be able to knock a couple dudes out? That's really, you know, going to be probably his bread and butter, knocking guys out. That's what it's been so far. I mean, he's knocked out 3 guys in the first round, amateurs, knocked out his first opponent in the first round, you know, and kind of like another heavyweight coming up, Tai Tuivasa. He's a guy that's 10-0 right now. He finished all 9 of his first fights via first round KO. He just fought Andrei Arlovsky at UFC 225, and that was his first time going to the 3rd round. That could be Greg Hardy's path, just knocking dudes out on the way up. Now, as far as how far he can go up, you know, being a former football player and not having as much combat experience, I don't know. But I'm going to be watching, because these are heavyweights, and the heavyweights like the swiggity swang and bang. Speaking of swang and bang, perfect transition into Derek Lewis. This is a potential future super fight in the heavyweight division, and I know people think that I use the word super fight lightly, but I don't. The only time I'm talking about super fights is when it's gonna be a really big fight, like a banger, like one that every casual fans are gonna be tuning into, or if it involves Artem Lobov. Other than that, it's not a super fight. But if Greg Hardy can take on Derek Lewis at any future UFC event, that is a super fight in the sense of everyone's gonna be watching. I would assume everyone from the people from the NFL fans and stuff like that, like my brother, he's a big NFL NBA fan, but he doesn't watch a lot of UFC. I told him Greg Hardy was fighting tonight on Dana White's Contender Series. He was like, ah, okay, but he didn't necessarily make the effort to come back here and watch it. But if I was able to tell him the whole fucking backstory of what's going on between, you know, because he's an NFL fan, he knows Greg Hardy's past, what he was convicted of and stuff like that, why he's no longer in the NFL. But add that on top of Derek Lewis, who would be the perfect heavyweight opponent. Derek Lewis is already a fan favorite, and he also speaks out against domestic violence. He has after fights, before fights, in interviews. So that is just like a fucking match made in UFC heaven as far as, you know, opposites, you know, and it's fucking black on black crime. No, I'm just kidding, that's a joke. Shout out to Derek Lewis. But I'm just saying that would make this fight would be absolutely insane. But with that being said, man, holy smokes, Greg Hardy is officially in the UFC, got that contract. Let the full-time family know what you guys think in the comments. And for sure, let me know what you think about a potential Greg Hardy versus Derek Lewis fight. And as always, thanks for checking out this video. If you're new, or if you're just slacking on your pimping, make sure you hit the subscribe button and also hit the notification bell next to it so you're notified every time I upload a video. And if you want to help support this independent channel, you can either click the PayPal button in the description, or you can go to patreon.com/fulltimemma and consider becoming a patron. I'm out.
This is #1 bullshit.